what we're going to look at now is how to there we go. How to connect up a CSS file to your HTML file and to style a page. So what we're going to do is we're going to style the tables that you did yesterday. Now hopefully we'll get a chance to do this in the time that we have. If we don't get it finished today, I'll need you to do that in your own time and get it done. Okay? But I think we'll have time today. So my lovely pretty table here, I think it reads quite nice. That's the same as your table. If we look at the HTML there, there's nothing strange or startling. We just have a table and a caption. We have a TR. The first row here, all right, is full of THs rather than TDs. And then in the other rows, the first cell in each one is a TH instead of a TD. But that's not unlike your one, where you have the special cells in THs and then the regular ones in TDs. So there's nothing different about this table. However, in the header of the HTML document, inside in the head, I've put in this code here that says link rel equals style sheet, href equals the name of the style sheet here, and then type equals text/CSS. And so that says to the browser that here's the web page, but the information on how to style this page is in this file called, in this case, tablestyles1.css. Now, tablestyles1.css is a bog standard text file like a HTML file, but you save it as a .css. But it's still only a plain text file that you make in Notepad or Notepad++ or Text Wrangler or whatever. Now, we saw in class, did we see in class? This is how the structure of a CSS file? Okay, we're going to have lots of fun today, so. Okay. My apologies. So I need to talk a bit more about CSS then. I know it's going to get confused eventually with all the comings and goings. So, excuse me now 1 second. So, like I had been saying in the lecture last week, okay, if you have an external linked CSS file, several pages can use that, and if you change the style, all those pages will change. It turns out that browsers have by default a style sheet. So when you made your list, for example, and it decided to use bullet points, a particular size, a particular color, that was based on the browser's style sheet. So when the browser comes out of the box, it already has a style sheet associated with it. You can, as a user, actually specify your own style sheet. So you might say, I like my H1s to be in blue, if possible. You know? Typically, the reason a person would have a user-defined style sheet is if, say, if they didn't see very well, and they wanted their text to be white on black instead of black on white. So that's when you usually see user-defined style sheets, where the person with some sort of a visual impairment might want to override what the browser would do naturally. Then, if you have a linked style, remember the difference between linked style, embedded style, and inline style? Did I explain those? Did I explain them? Did you forget them? I don't think I explained them. So you can have your style information in 3 different places. You can have a style inside in the tag itself, as we have here. And that would apply just to that tag. that's not much use really. If you do that all the time, like you'd have to change that for every single tag. If you make a change, you have to go back and do that. It also clutters up the HTML something fierce. So you don't really get any of the advantages of using CSS by using inline styles. So generally they're a bad idea. They can get you out of a tight spot if you're stuck, but generally we don't use them. For this module, you won't use them at all. For this module, they're just verboten. Okay? You can have an embedded style, and this is a style sheet that you put inside in the HTML document. Now it's only going to apply to that document, so it's of limited use really. And it applies only to the document that it's in. What some people do when they're developing a style is they will maybe, instead of having the HTML file and the style sheet both open and then making changes, doing like, you know, file save, refresh, you might use an embedded style inside in the HTML document just while you're developing it. And then when you're happy with how it looks, take that out and put it into an external file that's linked so that you can use it for other pages. So if you are going to use embedded styles for this module, it would just be while you're developing the page. Handing up something with embedded styles wouldn't be acceptable. So for this module again, they are verboten. No. We're going to use link styles. So a link style, you have a link in your HTML file. You say link href equals mystyles.css, whatever the style file name might be, the CSS file might be called. You say rel equals style sheet, type equals text/CSS. So this is a text file that has a .css extension. So we're going to look now at the Cascade and Cascading style sheets refers to the fact that you have this hierarchy here. So user styles would take priority over browser styles. Link styles would take priority over user styles. Embedded styles would take priority over link styles, and inline styles would have priority over embedded styles. So if you have an embedded style that says this particular H1 should be blue, and you have an embedded style, an inline style, for example, that says it should be blue, and an embedded style that says it should be red, well, the blue will win out because it has a higher priority. So that's, we're talking about cascading style sheets, that's the Cascade. I'm flying through this now, guys, I'm sorry, but I really want you to actually go in and do it. So we'll kind of cut ahead to the meat. So, a CSS file then has a bunch of rules. So in the first part of the rule, you have a selector. And that's the thing you're talking about. So this is saying wherever you have a paragraph, I want you to do this to it. The second part is the declaration. And then in the declaration, you have a list of properties and the attributes you want them to have. So this CSS rule is saying wherever you have a p tag, I want the color property to be blue. So here, just to give you an example, we have this page here. And I'm not holding this up as an example of good design or anything, it's barely readable. Here we're saying wherever you have a body, I want the background to be such and such a color. And I want the font to be this way. Where there's a H1, I want it to be blue. No. See there, 0000FF? That's blue. I want the font family to be whatever. Where there's a H2, I want the color to be whatever. I want you to indent it 60 pixels. And I want the font family to be whatever. So you have the selector, which is the thing you're talking about, and then you have the declaration where you say what you want to do with it. Now, just an important note about fonts, okay? A person looking at your site can only display the page in the fonts they have on their machine. So if on your machine at home you've got super cool font number 72, and you style your web page with super cool font number 72, that's perfectly fine. You should just be prepared for the possibility that someone in Timbuktu doesn't have super cool font number 72 on their machine. And so what you can do in CSS is you can specify a list of fonts in order of preference. So you might say, I want super cool font number 72 for this piece of text. Then you might say, if you don't have super cool font number 72, well, then use super cool font number 70. And if you don't have that, well, then use Times. If you don't have that, well, then use something else. And then at the very, very end, you must always specify what we call a generic font family, which in this case, in this example, is sans serif or sans serif. Now you can actually have multiple declarations in a rule as well. So you can say, well, we saw that in the previous example anyway. So when you have a paragraph, I want the color to be red, I want the font size to be whatever, I want the line height to be whatever. Let's get past that. There are 5 generic font families: the serif, sans serif, monospace, fantasy, and cursive. So your list of fonts must always end with one of these. Now generally you'll be saying serif or sans serif. Okay? You see there on the bottom of the F and the bottom of the I, it has sort of little feet in the serif one, the top one there. Those little legs, those little feet, that's what the serif is. And typographers typically classify fonts into 2 groups, the ones that have serifs and the ones that don't. Monospaced fonts are ones where all the letters are the same width. So in Times, for example, it isn't monospace. And so if you have 20 M's or you have 20 L's, the 20 M's will take up way more space than 20 L's. In a monospaced font, they take up the same amount. So maybe times you need that. For example, if you're a maths lecturer and you're, having columns of numbers, you want, the ones and the tens and the 100s and thousands to line up underneath each other. So you might specify there a monospaced font. So you can specify any font you want under the moon, stars, and sun. And you list them in order of preference. But then you must end with one of these. And so then, if the browser doesn't have any of the ones that you want, well, it'll use the serif font of the day, or the sans serif font of the day, whatever it has. It'll have one font, at least, it'll have one font from each of these families here. Fantasy is generally for sort of freaky text. I haven't seen many browsers support it really, and cursive then is meant to be something that looks a bit like handwriting. Okay, very good. Now we can actually look at the code. Now, I am mindful of the fact we're flying through this, okay? But I want us to catch up with the other groups. So this is the CSS file for this table here. So here we're saying wherever you have a table, I want you to use these properties, okay? I'm declaring these properties. So we have, I want the border to be 5 pixels in size and thickness. For borders, you can specify whether you have sort of dotted lines, double lines, single lines, all sorts of things. We're going for solid as one of those options, and we're saying it's in black. And so you can see that there, it's kind of big. If I go into the CSS file and change that to 15, we'll see a big difference. That's what 15 pixels looks like as opposed to 5. Now, what's interesting about the table is that because we have TH cells and TD cells, we can make the heading cells look very, very different from the regular cells because we can style them differently. So this is saying wherever you have a TH, I want the background color to be this shade of blue. And we want the color of the text to be FF, which we know from yesterday to be white. Here we're saying we want the border to be 1 pixel and solid. I think you can't actually see the border because I suspect it's white on white, and so we're not seeing it. So there's no real nothing to show there for that. This font variant property lets you have small caps. So you see here where like D on Monday is an uppercase D. Actually, if you look at my HTML, it's a lowercase d. It's big M and then O-N-D-A-Y in lowercase. So it's actually the style here that's making it display what we call small caps. So the uppercase letter appears larger and the rest then are uppercase letters but smaller. Padding gives you space around the contents of the cell. And then look here, we're saying, I want the font family to be Courier. And if you don't have Courier, then whatever your Monospaced font of the day is, whatever you do for Monospaced, use that. So you must end with a generic font family. Now, the reason these cells look so different is I'm able to style the TDs and the THs separately. So here we're saying TD, wherever you have a TD, I want the background color to be this. I want the text to be black. I want the border to be 1 pixel, solid, and that shade of blue. I'll just go in there and change that to black, for example. See, it looks different now. Oh, that's happening in the CSS file. I haven't gone near the HTML file. The HTML file just has the structure of the table. All the information about the colors and the styling, that goes in the CSS file. There's some padding, and here I'm saying I want the font family to be Florence, and if you don't have that, well, whatever cursive you're having yourself will do. And that's why it looks handwriting-y. Similarly, we're able to style the caption and give it different colors. Okay? So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to style your table, but not exactly the same as mine. But you can use different colors for the properties. Maybe you could look up the border properties, the possible kind of styles you can have, like the lines can be dotted lines and stuff. And you do all sorts of things. But maybe just work on the colors for now. And of course, what makes this table so handy is that the TDs and the THs can be styled separately. That's why I was so keen for you to use TH and TD. Now, if you put a border equals 1 in your table tag yesterday, just so you could see the table properly, you want to remove that now and henceforth never do such a bold thing again. Okay? Any questions on any of that? So flake away and see how you get on with that. Rather than have me talk about it now anymore, I'd sooner have you give it a lash and go wrong than sit and listen to me. So I leave that on the screen, and the TD then is similar, okay?